What an honor. What a blessing today to be with Randy Carlyle here at the Espanola Library.
Library in Espanola.
Uh, and you're here. We're here to have you share some of your life experiences. And I'm going to say it. You're a homegrown hero for Rayside-Balfour. I truly believe that. And
hmm
my first question to you is, can you share with us your early life and your roots, and talking about your maternal and paternal grandparents and your parents and then the community? What, as a young boy, what what was your life like in your early life like?
Well, if you start with my dad's parents, they were both born in Canada, and they're from the Iron Bridge area. They had 10 children, 5 boys, 5 girls. So my dad came from a large family and grew up on a farm in Iron Bridge, but left that area to come to the Sudbury area for employment. And he had a automotive or a mechanic type of background. Not what I would say scholastically, but self-taught. And he moved to the Sudbury area and got a job with one of the towing companies to start. So he started off with a tow truck and driving the tow truck, and that led to a mechanic's position. And if I'm not incorrect with it, it was called Meredith Conley Motors at that time. And there wasn't a lot of car dealers at that time. One was a GM and one was a Chev, or a Ford, excuse me. And I think he went to and worked at Meredith Conley, and then was offered an opportunity through Inco, got hired at Inco as a maintenance mechanic. And they were the crew that, and I'd gotten this from my brother, Don. He said that their crew consisted of 7 or 8 guys that worked at different shifts. Shift work used to be 3 shifts. There was an all day, it was afternoon shift, day shift, and what they called then a graveyard. So they split that crew up and they called them the Misfits. For whatever reason, I don't know the reason behind that, but they were in charge of fixing the pumps and any of the surface work, not in the mines. They didn't go underground. My father didn't want to go underground, never wanted to work underground. So he started off with Inco and worked there for a number of years, and then retired from Inco through health reasons. He had health issues with the kidney. He ended up having a kidney transplant, and that led to some complications further down the road, and he passed away in '89 from
Okay.
complications that were beyond his control, and we were, devastated with that. But previously, my mother, coming from a Finnish family, and her parents were both from Finland, right from Finland. And the towns I do not know, but my grandmother came to Worthington from Finland. Her family migrated and homesteaded in Worthington. And they had actually changed her name. I can't remember the Finnish name, but she wasn't a Matson, but she became a Matson
Oh,
after landing into the Worthington area. And then her family transferred to Garson. And that's where she met my grandfather, he had migrated and started in Nova Scotia, and then transferred to the Sudbury area to work in the mines for Falconbridge at that time. And Falconbridge was in Falconbridge where it is today, so everybody lived in Garson, being it so close geographically. So what happened? He worked in a number of years in the mining industry, and he didn't like the mine. And he decided that they were going to farm, and he bought the farm on Labine Street in Azilda, where we grew up, and there was an 80-acre farm there he bought for $751 or $750 in 1941. And my brother still has the receipt of paying for
oh
the
my
farm of 80 acres. And then there was 4 lots taken off of it. One for my parents, with the daughter, and one for my aunt, Vi. Schofield and my mother, we lived 4 doors down, and the farmhouse was in the middle. And that's where I grew up, in that little house, with my grandparents being right next door. And then when they sold the farm, they sold 20 acres off, and they built a small little house on the 4th little lot that was taken off of it. And they finished their lives there. They lived there for 25, 30 years after finishing farming. And that farm that they actually, when they moved into the Finlandia home, I purchased that farm. And there was 3 10-acre lots taken off the back for 3 boys, and that being myself, my brother Don, and my cousin Harvey Schofield. So we had 3 10-acre lots taken off of the back end of it that is on Bonnet Street, and my brother still lives there. And now he owns the property, 60-some acres, and the house that I had purchased from my grandparents and they lived in, we sold it to my cousin from Iron Bridge, Tom, and he still lives there to this day on Labine Street. So our family ties run strong on Labine Street, but the start, of their lives was obviously the ability to come and work. Inco was the draw, or Falconbridge was a mining town, and that would be considered pretty normal at that time, because the jobs that were available were good-paying jobs for their time zone. They had strong unions, and they had medical coverage and dental coverage and all the things that that you needed at that time to raise a family. You needed the quality company to work for, and Inco and Falconbridge was able to provide that for all of my brother's offspring and my sister's husband, and all of them were attached to the mining industry at some point, be it support of it or being actually working for Inco. So they all did and were employed there.
So if I understand, listening to you, there's family roots there, coming for family to survive economically, but also with all what you've shared with us, it's become a place of a lot of memories.
Well, for me, it was, I grew up as a kid there, and Labine Street didn't have more than 5 or 6 houses on it at that time. And there was, that was our neighborhood. Grew up down the street from, the Nesbitt family, the Couture family, the Sullivan family. The Italian people that were there were the Perazzato and the Frolin, the Zanella. And the McAllisters lived around the corner. Richard, Robert, Carol, Peggy, Russell, just a few of them. I might maybe not name them all off, but we were neighborhood kids playing neighborhood sports. There was a ball game. You played baseball. If there was a football, you played football. If there was soccer, you played soccer. And the land between that is now what you'd consider bush on Labine Street to Bonnet Street was all field at that time. There was very little bush. It was all farmland. And the farms started to dwindle and farming went by the wayside, and those fields and that bush was a hideout for a young group of boys that built cabins and made slingshots and bow and arrows, and we lived a life of being much more rural route, did a lot of hunting. It started with slingshots and then pellet guns, BB guns, and then eventually to 410, and we shot partridge, we shot rabbit. We did all of that from our home, and we'd walk. And then we eventually got into duck hunting. The Nesbitts were big-time duck hunters and still are duck hunters. And we used to walk miles and miles and miles. We walked from Labine Street to walk the shoreline of Whitewater Lake to where Bishop's Point was now.
Oh, yes.
But that was never there.
No.
There was no road in there at that time, and we walked that shoreline to shoot ducks. I shot ducks off of Rocky Point across from the point at Centennial Park. There's a little point it was called Rocky Point. It was one of the premier duck hunting spots for us as kids growing up, and there's still thousands of ducks that do come into Whitewater Lake, because I go every once in a while to watch them come in, and those are the memories. But we did a lot of that. Outside was the activity, because your parents, they used to tell you, if you get outside and do something, get the stink blown off you. If you were inside, they had to find you work. You had chores to do. They'd find you'd had to clean the porch, sweep the porch, do this. But again, it was rural route, and we had big gardens and big lawns and flowers, and all of those things were important to our family. So as a young kid growing up, I got assigned a lot of the chores that were, I cut the grass, I hoed the garden, weeded the garden, picked the raspberries. I hated that job with a passion. And
Did you enjoy though eating a
no,
raspberry cake?
no, I'm not a fruit or a vegetable eater. So they was always safe to send me out because they'd get a full basket back because I wouldn't eat any. And the blueberry picking in the middle of the summer, we always went blueberry picking. Over to where the Rayside, well, it was the Elzilda dump at that time. There still is a landfill there. And we walked those hills a lot. And we did a lot of those things with my grandparents and with my aunt and uncle. And it was a real tight-knit group of family unit there that when somebody was going, everybody had the invite or knew when it was happening, and we made an event to get there. Our birthday parties were wiener roasts and marshmallow roasts, and it was in our backyard or my aunt and uncle's backyard or my grandparents' backyard. All the birthdays were celebrated in our backyard, and it was a big event. And to this day, I still, enjoy the odd wiener over an open fire. And the cake that we had was either it was a chocolate cake with white icing or a vanilla cake with chocolate icing, and vanilla ice cream, or butterscotch was just coming in, and Jell-O. That was the three staples of our dessert.
But it meant a lot for you. I'd like you, from your sharing that, family is important to you. And I'm touched. I'd like to see the value that your grandparents or your mom and dad shared with you and that have stayed with you.
Well, I think that I wasn't any different than any other young kid growing up in that era. Your parents didn't have a lot of extra resources financially. There wasn't a lot of extra money made available. I came from, I've got 4 sisters and 1 brother, so we had 6 children in our family, a large family. So there was, shop the specials, cut the coupons, buy a hind quarter of beef, and we split it with Martin Geib on Bonnet Street, and they'd go to Sturgeon Falls and buy the young calf and raise it all summer, and then it was butchered in the fall for the meat for us for the winter. And the moose that was shot, if we went moose hunting and shot a moose, that was part of the freezer. Those were the things that were the staples. And growing up, you never really ever knew what you had, but you were always striving for more, and there wasn't a lot of extra. There was not a lot of extra, so you learned how to be satisfied with what you were earning and what you could earn for yourself. The number one thing that I can remember from transitioning from a young kid to somewhat of a teenager, 13, 14, it was imperative that you got a summer job. It was imperative that you had the ability to go to work and find a work and job for the summer months. You went to school, but as soon as school was out, you were vying around looking for a job for the summer months because other people had more cash than you did, but the only way you were going to get it is you had to work for it. And we found ways to get employed. And, one of my first jobs was cutting grass at the behind, which was the Azilda Arena now, which is Edgar Leclerc Center. And I worked on a summer crew cutting grass, and we actually built the backstop that is there to this day on the field closest to Notre Dame Street. We built that backstop. There was Frank Zarko, Rick Kirchner, and myself, the group of 3. I think there was one other kid that, and I don't know, it wasn't the Nesbitt family. It might have been Mark Leclerc. But we built that backstop, and we were part of the groundskeeping crew. And then the Azilda Arena, when it had collapsed, the old culvert arena that was shaped like a culvert, it collapsed with a snow load, and they rebuilt the arena. And one summer we got the opportunity to work, and we worked at night putting the seats in the arena. The seats that are in the Azilda Arena, I participated in installing them. and that was a rated job. And that was a better paying job, because I think I was making $2.75 an hour, and I went to $5 an hour to be able to work it and put the seats in. And then the other job that I performed for the township at that time, I was weighing trucks. There was a contract to repair the roads, be it Bonnet Street, be it Labine Street, or wherever it was. I'd walk and meet the Boulanger, J.P. Boulanger and his sons. I'd walk and meet them and get a ride to the pit in Dowling, and they would haul gravel, and I would weigh the gravel trucks and weigh the trucks and get a ride home with them at night when the last truck came. And the truckers always were, they left early. I'm telling you, they were early. And I either rode my bike or walked from Labine Street to Boulangerville or Notre Dame Street. But there used to be a path through the field that we always took, that we never had to walk the road. We always went cross country, and we rode our bikes there, and we created that path. So it was always going in and going to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, catching the truck at 5:30, and the last truck would come home at 6, and then by the time we got home, we were beat. It was a long day, but I made $9 an hour, and that was a huge raise. That was like that. My eyes opened up as far as working, and then I finally, in my last year of junior hockey, or second last year junior hockey, I got to work for Inco as a summertime employee. Because when your dad was employed by the company, there were summertime jobs for students made available, and as long as you had the application, you could pass the medical, you went in and you got an opportunity to work. And I worked the 3 shifts at Inco. I worked surface at the FBR building, the fluid bed roaster building, and I washed floors and painted, steam cleaned, and did more janitorial style of work. But it was $11 an hour with a union.
Oh my gosh.
And it was, you got a 40-hour week, so you're making $400 a week. And that was the kind of things that that showed growth from my perspective. But you didn't realize it when you were doing it, because everybody worked and everybody was doing the same thing. And my friends of mine that I grew up in high school, they were all doing the same thing. Everybody was going and vying for work in the summer months, so you had extra cash.
So hard work. I'm into you as sharing that with us. You're talking about community. You're talking about friendships. At that moment of your life, what was the importance of community? We're talking about being open to other people, to being kind, to being generous.
Well, I can tell you that I don't think I could say that we were that kind and generous, because we were always vying for a higher position in competition. And then growing up, I grew up in Isilda. Chelmsford was an enemy.
I was a Chelmsford girl.
Yeah,
and we couldn't go out with the Isilda boys. That was taboo.
We were in Isilda, and that was Rayside Township, and Chelmsford was Balfour Township, and they were separate.
Oh, yes.
And we competed in baseball against them. We competed in hockey against them. We competed, and even in schools, you know. And then it changed. Then they amalgamated Rayside-Balfour. It became one township. So then all the people that we were aggressively fighting against and not getting along with became our group and became our friends. Because
Chelmsford High.
Yeah, through Chelmsford High School. And when I went to Chelmsford High School, it was shift in my second or third year, not grade 9 or not grade 10. I think grade 11 and 12, it went to shifts.
Oh, I was teaching there.
Yeah, and I was in the morning shift, so we'd start class at 8, I think it was, or 7, whatever it was, and then we'd be done by noon. So that was kind of like a dream come true for an outdoorsman that we were, and that played right into our hands about going hunting in the fall and playing the winter sports or doing things that were activities that were outside. And we were lucky enough, and I thought we were fortunate enough, because we didn't have to go to school in the afternoon and get home at 6 or 7 o'clock at night.
Well, that was Rayside High School. Because I go to Rayside, I was one of the first teachers there.
Yeah, and Rayside High School but the French community got a brand new school, and we didn't. And there was a little bit of a political uproar from an English community in Rayside-Balfour, and wondering why the new school went to the French community. Those are all little small town little tiffs that I'm sure that have taken place over the years, and that's not going to change. There's probably still those little things that happen, but that's what happened with us and growing up in high school and going on, that high school was a stepping stone. And after working at Inco for the summer, I could not see myself doing that for the next 35 years of my life. That stimulated me because I saw people that had 35, 40 years service, and wonderful men, like old timers that we got, and you meet with them in the lunchroom and they tease you and they bug you and, all of those things. But that was the camaraderie that men have in that workforce, like that was the way it was. But at that time, Inco probably had a 17, 18,000 man workforce, where now it's 3,000 or 2,000 or whatever the number, because automation has taken over. But at that time you were working and there was 3 full shifts, the parking lot was full, everybody was employed. So there was a lot of activity and a lot of people that you were interacting with, but it really drove the nail home to me that I didn't want to do this for the rest of my life. If this was what I was going to have to do, then I was going to have to change my attitude. I never really took hockey. Hockey was very, very an easy thing for me to do. It came natural for me. And the work ethic and whatnot, I didn't develop that till after going to that, working in an industrial town and an industrial mining setting, the smelter, and watching people, put 35, 40 years in there. And to me, it was like, wow, I don't want to do this. So it was a light switch went on.
Well, before we go to the hockey and the coaching, I want to ask you, you told me you're going fishing behind Cape Creole with some friends. And we've rearranged this meeting because we really want the interview with you. We really believe in it. Why would you've left Azilda, but you're going fishing with people in Cape Creole? Why? And with who are you going?
I actually am going with Chelmsford and Azilda people. But we go to the Cape Creole area because a friend of ours, Ron Chevrier, his father had a camp on Rome Lake. And his dad had that for probably 40 years or 50 years. And Ron has taken it over, and we've went there probably 10 or 15 times over the last 10 or 15 years. The same group of guys go. And I've went to Harold Nesbitt's camp on Lake Nipissing in Cache Bay. The same group of guys have been there. So it's like our friendships that we had in Rick Kirchner, Ronnie Chevrier, Harold Nesbitt, Claude Belil. Those would be the 4 that I would say that are their fishing group. And then I still have the Jerry Lamoureux from the Lamoureux farm on, his dad used to work at the liquor store. He ran the LCBO in Chelmsford, nicest man, and he farmed potatoes. And Jerry and I used to take the red van and fill up the potato sacks and go sell potatoes so we'd have cash for gas. And Jerry's still on that farm. He's got at least 50 head of Black Angus cattle, and he farms there. So those are the people that I integrated with when the racetrack became part of our life there, because that, again, in my last year junior hockey, I didn't go to high school. I was finished high school. I worked at the racetrack in the morning. So I shoveled horse manure for 5 days a week or 4 days, whatever the schedule was, and then I practiced in the afternoon. So it was always an extra $75 a week that I made working in the barns, grooming horses and doing whatever was needed to be done. And then when I played hockey, I was making $50 a week. So all of a sudden it was $125 a week that was made available, where most kids playing junior hockey were getting $12 and $15 after they paid their schooling and whatnot. So we always had a little bit of extra cash, but I used the cash to drive back and forth to Sudbury in a beat up old car because that's all you could afford. The first vehicle I had was my dad's old 65 Biscayne. It had 100 and some thousand miles, but that was our family car. And then he gradually moved on to something else, and so it got left to me. And I always remember that when I washed it, it looked worse. It was a dirty old car, but when I
It
kept,
got you where you wanted to go.
but it beat walking or beat
Oh.
pedaling a bike, and that was important. It was important. But you see, we never really had a range. Like kids today don't understand that they get to go to so many different places in the world, where our world was Sudbury and maybe to Toronto. Maybe once to Toronto or once to go visiting some relatives, but our world was Sudbury. We didn't get to go across Canada. We didn't get to go to Europe. Like my kids that are growing up now, by the time they were 20, they'd been to Europe a couple times. They've been across Canada. They've been across the U.S. It was so different that our little world was so small. And when I come back to it, it's home. That's why I come back. I've come back to Manitoulin Island. We purchased a cottage there in 1979. Rod Shutt and I, a former teammate and ex-NHL player, him and I, we purchased Lacotia Lodge on the shores of Lake Manitou. We'd been on the island doing a hockey school with Joe Drago. Okay. We started that in West Bay in 77 or 78. And we started coming every summer for the 2-week hockey school. And we were staying across at Red Lodge, and we were nosing around and seeing if there was any places for sale. And actually, the people that were participated in the hockey school, Gus Dubosky and Charlie Bowden, had just purchased this lodge from somebody, and we gave them $30,000 profit in 3 weeks. So they were happy that they made their money, and we bought the lodge and then split it into 3 pieces of parcels of land. Rod kept one and I kept one, and then we sold the other one. So we worked out a deal there, and I ended up ending up with this piece of property, and I built a retirement home there in 2001. We've spent every summer there since 1979.
Oh, beautiful.
And we're so fortunate because it's one of the nicest places in the world. And I've been to a lot of places. There isn't too many that can match how we feel about Manitoulin Island and about our cottage property. But my wife's family's from Sudbury. My family's in Sudbury. So we're always back and forth to the Rayside-Balfour area because of my friendship and my family. I got a brother who lives on Bonnet Street, a sister who lives on Labine Street. My other sister, Elaine, the youngest, she lives in Sudbury on 2nd Avenue. I've got a sister in Cornwall and one in Toronto, and my brother, as I said, in Bonnet Street. So there's always family ties going back there. And it's good to go back in to see the people. And some people, like, it's hard because sometimes you go to these places. Just for example, I go into the doghouse. Okay. Everybody knows who the doghouse is.
You couldn't eat your meal, I bet you.
You just don't recognize everybody. Like you went to school with this and you played hockey with this person, and people do change and I change, but again, you just don't recognize everybody. And I do see some of the familiar faces and some of the people, and obviously the friends of my family that are still there. They interact. My sister Layla interacts with, as you were talking about, Nicole McAllister, Martin and Sylvia Canola. They're all still local people. Jimmy and Paulette Smith, Gary Smith, and Dorothy. They're back on Bonnet Street. The Smith family has about 10 properties off of that old farm. So all these people were friends of my sister, older. They became friends of mine because at a young age, when my sister went camping and when they were doing the camping into the provincial parks and going up to Bisco and going up to whatever lake it was, we always would drive up and see them on a Sunday afternoon, have dinner with them and drive home. We were always invited, and we always had the comfort zone that we were never intruding. There was always something there for us to do with your family.
So home, family ties, friendship ties, those are important to you. I want to talk about your hockey and your coach experience, like the challenges and also the career highlights.
Well, when you play hockey, every kid's dream is to play in the NHL. I don't care whatever age group you are. And mine was no different, but it was more along the line. We played hockey in the winter months, and we focused on hockey. But when the summer came, we played baseball. We played soccer. We played whatever sport was available, we played. It wasn't just hockey, but we played ball hockey. But the hockey became part of the fabric of us because, we had to work a lot harder at getting ice. And it just goes back to our family and the community that we grew up in. We were across the tracks, so weren't part of Civic Center in Isilda. We weren't part of that playground, and then that was in where Dr. Edgar LeClaire Center is now. That arena, that was the site of Civic Center Arena. So there was East End Arena was at the end of Laundry Street, and then there was Plateau Gay Playground, which was we were part of, and I think it's the Carpenters Union that's there right now on that site. That's where we were. They built a rink there, Plateau Gay Playground, and that's where really the roots of all the kids that lived on that side of the tracks and the parents' commitment. And my dad was part of that. Mr. McAllister was part of that. Cy LeClaire was part of that. Daryl Nesbitt was part of that. Mr. Couture was part of that. They all participated in making sure that rink was opened, the ice was flooded, and there was a safety net there. We could go there and on a Saturday morning, and we could start at 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, and we could play till 11 o'clock at night. If somebody, as far as the parent, responsible for turning the lights on and off, because we couldn't play in the dark. If there was somebody there to control that the lights went on, and the shack had a wood-fired stove in it, and we got cold, we went in and warmed up and went back out and played. And that's where all of those ties and those strengths of those relationships, that's where it started. And that's where the roots of hockey for me started, because it didn't matter if you were this big or this big. Everybody got to put their stick in the middle, and they were thrown out like this, and you picked teams, and it didn't matter which team you were on. You played with against kids that were 12 and you were 5, or you played against kids that were, when I was 12, I played against kids that were 18 and 19. It didn't matter. There was a community, and we always played. But then when the arena got built, the playgrounds kind of went by the wayside. And the one thing about the Civic Center, it was a community hub. It was someplace that the community, everybody gathered. There was events there, and it wasn't just hockey events. The girls played ringette. There was house league hockey. I refereed house league hockey at the Isilda Arena for $15 a day.
Oh my God.
And I started at 8 or 7 o'clock in the morning. I went till 4. And I refereed every game.
Oh my God.
And I had a big green parka, and I was freezing cold because that Isilda Arena was freezing at that time. It was cold. But that's what we did. And then I refereed or linesman adult league hockey during the week. But we always had access to ice. We were always on the ice, always on the ice, always on the ice. And that was the difference, because in the winter months, it wasn't about practice. It was about fun being on the ice.
Yes.
It didn't become a regimented situation until later. But as a kid growing up, the rink was the center of your life. It was the best thing that could ever happen, because you were there, and your parents liked it there because they knew who you were or where you were.
Yes.
And you weren't sitting at home doing nothing. You were out playing at the rink. And there was always that group, even, the Mr. Natchuks, the Zarko, that family, they were always around there. Mr. Shabbat, Murray, Mr. Murray, all these people, Mr. Kirchner, they were around the rink looking after their kids. And if you stepped out of line, you got it from one
you
of
were
them.
told.
You were told, and then if they told your parent, you got it again, because
So this was a real community.
Yeah, it was a community discipline.
Yes.
And there wasn't this. There was freedom, but there wasn't freedom. There was freedom to go and do the things you wanted to do, be at the rink, but
there was discipline.
You couldn't just raise HELL. Yeah. Without having some sort of consequence. If you ever got kicked out of the rink, it was the end of the world, because you were the only one, and there was everybody else at their nose. You're sitting out there with your nose up against the glass. Let me in, let me in. You didn't want that. You did not want that.
And you really wanted to be part of that
Well,
community group. It was important for joy and happiness.
That's where you belonged. You felt that you were part of that, and you belonged with that. And they wanted you to be part of it. You wanted your friends to be part of it. And, you know, it wasn't, there was that little competition within, but we were a gang. You were a group.
Why is that important, that belongingness, that part of the gang, and really wanting to be, what has that given you as...
Well, I think it's the development of being part of a team. And you're responsible. When you're part of a team, you're responsible to carry your weight or your piece of the rope, or you're supposed to bring something. And when you're a team, you're responsible to your team. You're not responsible to one as an individual. But when you're part of a team, you've got to make a contribution that's supposed to be positive. Now, however you decide that however they decide that you're going to do that, if you're capable of doing that and you're capable of making a contribution, then that's how the hierarchy gets created in teams. But, you know, like, those are the things that you look back and we played house league hockey in Azilda. I played for the Azilda Northern Flyers, and then I played high school hockey, and then I played midget hockey. You know, I was playing in 3 different leagues, and then when you played against one, you were teammates, and then when you go against the other one, you were nose to nose with them, you know, fighting them and getting in these, like, minor skirmishes.
It was competition.
It was all competition for space and hierarchy. But it wasn't. It was mean at that time. It was devastating, but it wasn't really earth-shattering. It was the odd punch in the nose, the odd, you know, black eye, and we all got to those things growing up. It was schoolyard banter.
Yes.
Yeah, there was always things going on in the schoolyard when you were growing up, and the things you did, and if you got sent to the principal's office or you got disciplined for it, you know, everybody had boundaries. And we were always tried to make sure that they kept you in boundaries and they were there. And yes, we pushed the envelope, but we didn't do anything bad. We didn't steal. We didn't go into the grocery store and steal. We didn't go to the hardware store. Did we think about it? Oh, for sure. But
you had consequences. You had consequences to your actions.
Yes, we had to pay. When you made a mistake, there was a penance to pay, and there was none of this, oh, we'll look after it, you know, that was cut and dried. If you got disciplined at school, you got it when you got home, you got it again. That's just the way the rules were.
Life was like that then.
Yeah, it was so simple. But that to me is part of the foundation that people and I always tried, and I can remember my dad always saying, treat people how you would like to be treated, or treat people with respect, because respect is going to come back. And
what you send out is what you get back.
Yeah, like if you don't put anything into it, don't expect anything back. You've got to put something into it. You got to make an effort, and you've got to be as honest as you possibly can to the situations that you're presented. Some people don't like honesty. Some people can't handle honesty. And I always thought that if I couldn't handle the truth, it's my fault. It is my fault. Mm-hmm. It's not their fault, because they told me the truth. And if it's the truth, then it's my fault if I can't handle it. So deal with it and move on. Take the next step forward. Move forward. Move forward. You always got to move forward. And we all have setbacks in life. And we've all had lots. We've all had tragedy in our life and whatnot. But you got to pick your feet up the next day and go. Put the work boots on. Go back to work. Yeah. You got to live. Push forward. You know, and in hockey.
And make peace with yourself.
Yeah, it didn't bother me. That's part of life. Growing up there was ups and downs and things that happened, but hey, the bottom line is that you got to live for today and live today as today, and then tomorrow's another day, and take that step forward. Because something happened today can't change your life dramatically. And so there are some things that do change your life dramatically, but you still got to find a way to get them and move past and beyond.
I want you to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Winnipeg Jets as a hockey player, and then head coach for the Anaheim Ducks and Toronto Maple Leaf. And I have to tell you that when you brought the Stanley Cup to Azilda in 2007, my husband, who had been a Montreal Canadian all his life, became a Toronto Maple Leaf because he was touched by your generosity, but your whole being of seeing a man from Azilda, a young boy becoming and bringing back to the hometown
Yeah.
that Stanley Cup?
Well, it was important to bring it back, but when you started out, like I started out in playing junior hockey, I was originally drafted by the Kitchener Rangers, and I was playing for the Azilda Northern Flyers at that time, and I got drafted by the Kitchener Rangers. I think it was in the 4th round, whatever. I went to Kitchener on a tryout, and I didn't make the team. So they wanted to send me to Guelph, which would have been their tier 2, would be their farm team. And I said, no, I'm not going to go to Guelph. And I was homesick. I got on a bus. I can remember getting on the bus, leaving Sudbury, broke my heart, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get to Toronto, take a transfer and whatever. So I get to Kitchener, didn't make the team, and they decide, well, you know, I'm going to go back to Chelmsford. I'm going to go play Chelmsford Canadians. They had a junior B team at that time, and I'm going to do that. And instead of taking the bus home, I flew. First time I ever been on an airplane.
Oh my gosh.
Scared the shit out of me. I can remember sitting on the airplane in Toronto, and they're revving the airplane. It was a jet then, and the jet was just shaking, and I was shaking too. What the heck is this thing doing? You know, they just roar down the runway, and you're home in Sudbury in 30 minutes. You know,
Oh,
like you're.
gosh.
And I'd never been on a jet before, never been on an airplane before, so it was a big time experience. But I came back, and I started to play junior B, and there was always, you had to sign a card to play, because if you signed that card, then you're that team's property, and you can only sign a card if you live in this district. There was districting that took place. So I was in Azilda. Naturally, I have to, if I wanted to play someplace else other than Chelmsford for my age group, I would have to get a release from Chelmsford to allow me to go play in Sudbury or say in North Bay or Sault Ste. Marie, unless I geographically moved there. But anyways, long story short, when I went to Chelmsford, I said, I need skates. Oh, you can't give me skates. You know, nobody gets anything. You know, nobody gets anything. I says, well, I need a pair of skates. You know, like I said, I'm not signing it unless I get a pair of skates. Gabe Belanger bought me the
Oh, I
skates.
know, Gabe, my cousin.
Yeah, Gabe Belanger.
Oh my
I actually
gosh.
gave the $150 or whatever it was,
Love it.
brand new pair of Super Tacs. I went to DeMarco Brothers, got fitted, and I got my skates. You know, and Gabe still talked about it up until you know his when he passed away a few number of years ago. And I still deal with Jose at the store now for a vehicle for the summer months. But Gabe Belanger bought the skates, and we talk about those things and kid about it with Jose now. But again, those are people that you know that had a huge impact by buying the skates. Automatically, I was buying my next Ford at Belanger Ford. My family buys all their cars at Belanger Ford. You know, like it's like that's what you do when you're born and raised in a community. Now, if they're going to charge you so much more than the next guy, well, they're going to take a look at it. I'm not saying that they're automatically, but they've been
recognition.
There's recognition, and it's your first call. And those are the kind of people. But that was my foray back to Chelmsford. And then when I went to Chelmsford, I was leading the league in points and I played defense then. And I was like 25, 30 points up on everybody. And the Sudbury Wolves made a trade for me. They traded me for me from Kitchener. Kitchener owned my rights at that time. So that's why how I ended up being a Sudbury Wolf. And I went to practice in Sudbury. I can remember I hitchhiked to Sudbury to get to practice from Azilda, because we only had one vehicle, and my dad was at Inco working, and he was a dialysis patient at that time, so he had to go to get his treatment at the hospital, and there was nobody on the team that lived in, so I hitchhiked.
Oh my God.
and hitchhiked. That was the way to get to Sudbury. That was the way I got to practice, but very first when I started. But then, you know, after I made the team and we started, then I got the old car and I got my own set of wheels to get us there. But that was the roots. And I played 2.5 years in Sudbury and got drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I went there and I made the team out of training camp. I played, I'd say, probably 25 games or whatever. I was in and out of the lineup, and they sent me to Dallas, to the minor league. I played another 25, 30 games there in my first year. And exactly the same thing happened in my second year of pro in Toronto. Started in Toronto, played a bunch of games, and then didn't really develop. I wasn't playing well enough to earn the spot, so they sent me to the minors. And the minors did, again, it was another thing when you talk about a setback. I looked at it as the boat only goes by so many times here, and I better get on this boat. You know, I don't want to be playing in the rest of my career in the American Hockey League or the Central League, and there's nothing wrong with playing there. But my goal was bigger than that. I wanted to play in the NHL, and then I finally got an opportunity when Toronto Maple Leafs traded me to Pittsburgh. It changed everything, because in Toronto I was behind Boreas Salming and Ian Turnbull. They were the top two defensemen, and they would have remained that way for a long time. When I went to Pittsburgh, there was nobody in front of me. So I got all the opportunity to develop and hone my skills and become an NHL regular in that environment versus the one that would have happened in Toronto. So my development was expedited by getting traded. And you don't think that getting traded is not an easy thing to deal with. It's not. It's like getting fired. It's just basically, it's because you're there, you're with this group of guys this day, and the next day you feel like you've
been rejected.
Yeah, you're no good. You're just low. You're like, it's not that somebody else wants you; they didn't want you.
So you look at it as a rejection rather than an advancement.
Yeah. Oh, for sure you do. But once you get, it happens more than once to you. It isn't that way. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it does, and it does. It is still a knock against your ego. But the bottom line is that it, in certain situations, is the best thing that could have happened, and that was one of the best things that could have happened to me. Is when I got traded from the Toronto Maple Leafs to the Pittsburgh Penguins, my growth and development went up the ladder, and I got to become an NHL regular. I won a Norris Trophy, and I became a premier NHL player for a number of years there. And then I got traded again from Pittsburgh. After 7 years in Pittsburgh, I got to Winnipeg, and I can remember it was very trying because I was married and at that time, and our son was only 3 weeks old, Craig, my oldest. And he was 3 weeks old, and I had to leave. They traded me at 5 o'clock at night, and they wanted me there the next morning. And I had to get on an airplane in Pittsburgh and fly to Los Angeles to meet the Winnipeg Jets. And my wife's standing at the door with a 3-week-old baby, and I don't know when I'm going to see her again, And I said, that'll never happen again. And I told her that. I said, we were never going to happen again. So then when I got traded to Winnipeg, I went there with a very open mind that I was going to make this work. It didn't matter. I played I was there in 87. I played till 93. Another 7 years. I was in Winnipeg. I think it was 7 or 8 years. And then I got into an opportunity to stay in management. I was afforded an opportunity to get involved. And I wasn't promised a specific job, but I was afforded an opportunity by the ownership there. And then the team left. I went into director of player development, and I went into color commentary on the radio, and then I was an assistant coach, and then the team got sold. And then the new ownership didn't take the coaching staff. So we were kind of without a job. Yeah, we had pay in the NHL. When you sign a contract, they have to pay out the contract. So I got paid the money, but I didn't have a job. So I was fortunate enough to hook on with the team that they brought in, the Manitoba Moose and Mark Chipman, and their management team. And I became assistant general manager to Jean Perron. Jean Perron was the Stanley Cup winner in Montreal, I think in '86. And he was the head coach, and things didn't work out for Jean in Winnipeg, and it didn't work out at all. And when he got fired, they promoted me to head coach and general manager, and I spent 6 more years doing that there as a management person in the IHL and then the American Hockey League. And then at that time, the NHL had to have a minor league affiliate to be a partner in the American Hockey League. So every team in the NHL has a minor league team. Like the Winnipeg Jets now have the Manitoba Moose. They're still there. The Montreal Canadiens have the Laval Rocket. The Toronto Maple Leafs have the Toronto Marlboros. They're part of their team. So that's part of the package. So Winnipeg, the Moose, didn't have an affiliation because Winnipeg wasn't back in Winnipeg at that time. The Vancouver Canucks needed an affiliation. So then that deal was worked out and I was general manager and coach, they had already had a coach. So they brought their coach in, and I stepped aside and then became president of the Manitoba Moose. And basically what I was is I went from being a hockey guy to a business person that had to sell tickets. It was all about selling tickets. So I got a little taste of that and I hated it. I did not like it. I'd come home at 2:00 in the afternoon. I said to my wife, I said, this isn't working. This isn't going to work for us or for me. So I told the ownership there that it's not going to work. I'm going to find myself an opportunity. And I left Winnipeg to go to Washington, D.C. as an assistant coach. I went there for 2 years and was an assistant in the NHL. And then they let the guy go in Winnipeg, and they brought me back to coach 1 year. I coached 1 year there, and then I got an opportunity. They offered me the job in Anaheim to go to the NHL. And that was my first head coaching position at the NHL level. And I went there in 05, 06. And I ended up going there for 7 years, till 2012. We won a Stanley Cup in 07, my second year there. And I was fortunate enough to do that. And then they let me go in 2012. I went to Toronto in 13. I was in Toronto for 3.5 years, and then they brought me back to Anaheim. I finished off 3 more years there as a head coach. And at that point, my wife said, that's enough. She didn't want to move anymore. She didn't want to go. We had grandchildren in the area. And here I'd been basically since 20 years old. I turned 67. I'd been in the game 47 years. And we'd moved 13 times. So, that takes its toll on your family life and her. And she was, good about going, and she said, that's enough. So I just respected her decision. I said, well, we're not moving again. And I think I could have continued on, and maybe not as a head coach, but I would have had to change, but I would have had another opportunity if I chose to. But we said no. We said that was enough. And we were fortunate enough that we were able to retire, pick and choose where we want to live and hang our hat. We live in San Diego in the winter months, which is a beautiful area in the United States. It's got the most level climate of any place I've ever been, 75 and sunny, not windy, not humid, not this, not that. But living in the U.S. is different than living in Canada. And we come back and spend 5 months here on Manitoulin Island, and brings us back, both our families, and brings me back to my family and my roots in Rayside-Balfour, and my wife and her family are still in the Sudbury area. So it's like coming home. It is a homecoming. So we've been fortunate enough to, when we won the Stanley Cup, there's 2 places I brought it. I brought it to the Zilder Arena,
yes.
And I brought it to a couple of, I brought it to Boulanger Mercury, and I brought it to Ronnie Chevrier's hardware store. And then we brought it to Manitoulin Island. There's a little community center in the little town that I live in. It's called Rockville. And we put over 3,000 people through that little building.
Oh my gosh.
And we took it to the grocery store there. We took it to the hospital there. And we took it to the hardware store. So in the 2 days, we had over 6,000 people view the cup when I had it in our possession for the 2 days. And it was a community-minded, event. The Zilder Arena was full.
Oh, I know.
It was for hours.
I was a counselor then.
Yeah,
I just
exactly. So
the people were so joyous and happy.
It's amazing what that piece of silverware does to people.
Oh my God!
It's like it's got an aura about it. And actually, I don't know if they're bringing the cup next year. Next summer, I committed to they're having a hockey panel. It's the 100th anniversary of the Kagawan community on the water and on Georgian Bay. Well, it's called North Channel as far as locals in the town of Kagawan and the municipality. And they're doing a hockey panel there. And I've committed to sit on it and do it. And they got the keeper of the cup. And I don't know if he's bringing the cup. I don't know if he's going to have the cup there, but we've committed to do this hockey panel. It's for their 100th year celebration of their community being part and their birthday. So it's a centennial celebration. So they asked us to do that. So we're committed to doing that next summer.
Your legacy. What do you want people to... You're a man that have made decisions throughout your life. Some decisions you thought weren't what you wanted to become, your journey, your legacy. Think of your journey as a young boy in Isilda on Labine Street, right up to the NHL, as a coach, as a hockey player. What's your legacy? What do you want to share with humanity, with the young children and the older adults of Isilda across this world? What's your legacy?
Legacy is a big word. I think I can't, from my perspective, I've never looked at what I wanted. It's what other people will determine your legacy.
Okay.
What other people say about you. You know.
What value? Maybe I should change the word to value. What's a value? Looking at your life journey, I agree with you. Legacy is not the right word, but the value, the goal, or the value that you want to share with humanity.
I think the first thing is he treat people how he treated people with respect, and you treat people how he liked to be treated. And believe me, I'm not the most delicate person in a lot of situations. I'm a fairly direct individual, but I'd rather have it that way. It goes back to, if I can't handle the truth, it's my fault. If you can't handle the truth, it's your fault. That's the way it is. And I might have peed off a lot of people, and I'm very upfront and direct, but I think then I told the truth. I was honest, didn't tell any lies. I told the truth, what I believed was the truth. And maybe every time it wasn't the truth, but I believed it was when I said it. And you could hold me accountable to it, because I was an honest individual, and I believed in an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. And there was nothing came for free. There was nothing came for free. Yeah, you got lucky every once in a while. Some things fell in your lap, and that's life. But you've earned it in other places where you've worked hard and still didn't have the success, or didn't achieve what you needed to achieve to have success, but you still gave it all you could give, and you fell short. We all fall short. There's only one winner of the Stanley Cup every year. There's 32 teams now competing for it. And I was fortunate enough to be part and lead a team to win it all. And we were close the year after and close the year before, but we fell short. But we did win it, and that's an accomplishment. But again, there's all other little accomplishments that you got kids that are grown up and respectful adults, and they have a work ethic, and they understand what's right and what's wrong, and it gives you pleasure that your kids are respected, and that the things that you and your wife and you tried to instill in them, they're holding true today for them and their young families. Like all those things are part and parcel. That's part of the satisfaction. But as far as legacy, I think that's up to other people to determine what your legacy is.
At the beginning, when we started the interview, you talked about your mother. Mm-hmm. Your mother had faith. Mm-hmm. I'd like you to, before we end, the impact that your mother's had. You said she prayed and she had faith.
Oh yeah, she had strong faith.
What has that done for you in your life?
Well, my mother wasn't a healthy woman for the majority of her life, and that was a huge. She had scarlet fever as a child and had a scarred heart. Then she had open heart surgery twice. One when she was, I think, 40, and then the other one when she was, I think, 51, where she had valve issues. She had open heart first, and then she died of congestive heart failure at 59. Oh, so she was a sick woman, and I was raised a lot by my sister Layla, my oldest sister. But again, my mother and father, they dealt with the ailments that they had. My father was a kidney patient, and it seemed like they nursed one another together. So when one was down, the other one was up. And then vice versa. So you learned that was the way to support one another. And that's what they did. And my mother, she had lots of faith. She prayed a lot. She had peace with herself, but she wasn't a woman that was well for a good part of her life. So, there wasn't a lot of things that you could do, because at that time she wasn't a candidate for heart transplant, because it was early in that realm of medicine. But it was and then when my mother passed away, we lost my father 4 days later.
Oh my gosh.
So my mother passed away on the 18th of December. My dad passed away on the 22nd, 4 days later.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like, you want to talk about picking yourself up, your whole family. But it was, that's what you had to do, is that you had to move forward the next day or the next week, and we had a young family. I got young kids. I had three young children. There was two at that time, and then we had a daughter later in life. And those are the things you live for your family, and you move forward, and you respect the things that your parents did, and the sacrifices they made for you. That was life, and I'm no different than anybody else, other than the fact that, I've been fortunate enough to have some success in a game that I loved, and a game that I was able to be fairly competitive at. I was decent enough to go on and make a living. And anybody that works in any kind of business, if you spend 47 years professionally doing something, you put your time in. And it's not all roses. I guarantee you it's not all roses, but that's all part of life. It's not easy. And I don't expect it ever to be easy for anybody.
On behalf of Leo and myself, we're blessed, simply blessed,
All right,
that you're here with us. I'm going to read this. Gary gave this to me yesterday. Your journey from Isilda. Gary Michalak has a lot of respect for you. Your journey from Isilda to the NHL stardom reflects the spirit of Canadian hockey and the resilience of Northern Ontario athletes. You're celebrated not only for your individual accolades, but also for your leadership and your ability to evolve as a decorated player and a champion-winning coach. So we're so grateful, Leo and I, to be able to experience part of that journey with you today here in Espanola. Yeah. That means a lot to Leo because he married here, and this is where I spent the first night of my honeymoon with Roland Dutrasac. So thank you. We're so blessed.
Oh, you're welcome. It was enjoyable, and anytime I can help you people out, feel free to call.
Well, we love you. We love you.
Well, thank
and
you.
We're glad that you're here today.
Well, thank you.